Welcome to Chatsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Chatsu Shorts. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing my own experiences as a content creator from 2020 all the way through to 2022. Without any further ado, let's hop into it. The days of a pre-2020 world feel like a distant memory. I remember back then being stuck in the same old routine, constantly telling myself that I would break out of the monotony life had offered, and at last follow my passions. Unfortunately for the rest of the world, we all know how that story unfolded once the pandemic hit. With many confined to their homes, any previous plans were at best put on hold, and at worst, dashed forever. It was a time of uncertainty, one that none of us knew how things would progress. I tried to keep myself occupied to begin with, filling my spare hours catching up on Netflix, studying languages, and of course gaming. But as the weeks blended into months, I started to turn my attention to the world of content creation. The problem was, I had no idea where to even begin. And then it happened. A simple conversation that changed my life. I opened up to a friend of mine, asking for his advice, and he replied with, "Why don't you try streaming?" Initially I was unsure what to think, as Twitch had a somewhat complicated reputation attached to it, from greatest fails videos to the latest controversies that came with it. I wasn't sure whether or not it would be the right platform for me, but after seeing my friend take the plunge and try it for himself, I too decided to give it a go. To say it was daunting was an understatement. Nevertheless, armed with a rickety second-hand computer given to me by a friend, I decided to try my hand at streaming. The first game I played was a poorly translated version of Pokemon Green, something that I was excited to share with the rest of the world. The only issue being that my PC of the time had the technical fortitude of a Russian roulette game, meaning that streams could last uninterrupted anywhere between 20 minutes to over an hour in the best case scenarios. As I started in those formative years of streaming, I did my best to cultivate a following, spamming the name Satsunami42 out there for the world to see. And yet, those first few months were what I consider to be by far the worst. My friends were always supportive of my hobby, that much is true. However, something people fail to warn new streamers about are those feelings of inadequacy and an urge to compare yourself to others. After all, 360 No Scope Fan 42 has thousands of followers. Why can't I do the same? Despite pushing on several platforms, my calls went unanswered, leading to me considering whether or not I should abandon the endeavour completely. It was a horrible place to be, and coupled with the isolation of lockdown, these negative thoughts started swirling in my mind. This resulted in me shifting to streaming directly from my console, and this was by far one of the best choices I had ever made. I began by playing some games from my childhood, such as Sonic Adventure and Call of Duty, gaining the attention of a few new followers. Afterwards, I approached a few of my friends to ask if they would like to stream GTA 5 with me, and thus the group Sinner Sandwiches was born. We played many games together until the title was quietly retired and renamed T-Posing, which became its own Let's Play series on YouTube. From then, I would pour my heart and soul into the channel as it grew slowly but surely into what it is now. And while I wish I could say this is the part of the tale where things got better and suddenly I became famous overnight, I hate to say it, but this wasn't the case. I would read articles of fellow streamers who were praised by the mainstream media as managing to break the mould of the traditional 9-to-5 job and make a living playing video games. But to me, streaming is so much more than that. There's a perception about Twitch that I myself once held, that it was relatively easy to sit in front of a camera and play games where the streamers' community showered them in praise and adoration. But the truth of the matter is that streaming is a lot harder than many people give it credit for. I have seen my fair share of people rush into streaming to become the next Ninja or Pokemon, ready to quit their job at a moment's notice. Unfortunately, that is definitely not the case, leading to some rather bitter behaviour and comparisons that are more detrimental rather than positive. Having the means to stream is only a small aspect, and even the flashiest of streams may not live up to their contemporaries. I learned that for the most part, having a good mic and being able to engage with your audience well was vital. As I said before, I too got swept up thinking I was doing something wrong. Since I wasn't seeing the success others had, then surely I was to blame. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. After all, if it weren't for streaming, I would have never met so many amazing people throughout my journey towards where I am today. From musicians and aspiring voice actors to gamers and cosplay, each person has a story to tell, and as I began networking, I found my place on the platform. Even during times when I felt unsure of myself, they were always there to provide words of encouragement and advice. Coupled with my friends who had supported me since the beginning, I knew that together we can make something to be proud of. And to this day, I am so proud of who they are, and I'm really fortunate to know them. While I didn't quite know what to expect, meeting like-minded people along the way certainly helped. Then in November of 2020, I decided to establish the Chatsunami podcast, which, as of this episode, has been going strong ever since. While the first 50 episodes were recorded live on Twitch, we decided to move on to pre-recorded shows, and since then the show has never been stronger. Once I got going, I discovered even more incredible people through the indie podcasting scene, and even managed to invite those I knew through streaming onto the show. Podcasting is definitely an entirely different beast altogether, with self-promotion and keeping a consistent schedule being the hardest of them all. But despite that, I'm glad I stuck with it. After all, next to streaming, the podcast has allowed me to stay in contact with my friends during a time of isolation and uncertainty. Even now I don't consider myself an influential content creator. Heck, I don't even know if I'll ever reach such a point in my life. But one thing I know for certain is, if I'm making even one person happy out there with my content, then it'll all be worth it. So for anyone out there curious about taking on the world of content creation, let me leave you with this advice. You'll see many self-appointed experts telling you the right way to do things, and that somehow if you aren't following this plan, then you'll fail. While there's no harm in listening to different points of view, there's no such thing as a catch-all technique for being the best creator. As cliche as it sounds, being yourself will attract your desired audience, and that may take time. Much like life itself, everyone will go at their own pace, and that's perfectly normal. You don't need to be a Twitch partner or a supreme podcaster in 3 months or less. The main thing is enjoyment. Without it, you'll easily burn yourself out. Also know when to take time for yourself and be wary of your mental health. We all live in a world where it's so easy to compare ourselves to others. Tearing down others will never aid your progress. Instead, try to learn from those who you may not appreciate and see how you can use these things to help your own growth. It's a long journey for sure, but remember, it's more of a marathon than it is a race. No decent person should judge you for being less successful than others. At the end of the day, we're all different, and that's what makes us who we are. We all have our own different interests, whether that be through something like gaming or podcasting. Nobody can take these away from you, and at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. I never really expected to still be doing this 2 years on. Back when I started, I was horribly self-conscious of my voice and had a negative outlook on the world. But thanks to this path I've chosen, I've managed to find glimmers of hope and in turn better myself as a person. And now, well honestly, I can't wait to see where the next 2 years will lead me. While this is an abridged account of my own journey, I would love to hear what you have to say. If you're a content creator as well, head on over to the Chatsunami website or DM me on Twitter. And on that note, good luck in your adventure out there. You're gonna be fantastic. Stay hydrated, Mandalorians. Thank you for listening to Chatsunami. If you would like to hear more episodes, then you can catch us on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcast distributors. As always, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated.